being able to deal with it in the right way, you have to acknowledge it first. And unfortunately, sometimes the police culture doesn't allow it. The bravado, it's just part of the job culture is still too prevalent in the blue light services, unfortunately. Probably the thing that most people never see or understand is the behind the closed doors. Everybody will see the dramatic police interceptors or chases on TV, or even for the programs with the ambulance service, the heading at people's houses and that. But what they don't actually see is the bits behind the closed doors. So the sudden deaths, the suicides, the family that you've got to pass the death message to. And then even after that, as a leader, for me, the other parts are making sure that the staff are okay, making sure that the support is around them. And cops are so busy now, they're going from call to call to call. Every shift, it's just relentless of call after call after call. There's just no stopping. So trying to get that time in between to make sure that support there is really challenging. So that's probably the biggest bit that no one ever sees. People are really quick to say, I phoned the police and 2 hours later they're still not there. Well, yeah, there might be some truth to that, but it's not always the reason because they're sitting having a lunch break. Because I can guarantee you, in nearly 25 years of working the police, I could probably count on 2 hands the amount of lunch breaks I've had. It just doesn't. You just don't get a lunch break, So that's what people don't really see behind the uniform. So leadership in terms of consequences can be varied. There is the opportunity as a police leader to have a slow, methodical approach to decision making. For example, I might have had a search warrant come across my desk and had to plan a team to go and effect that warrant and arrest someone. So the decision making is a bit more slow and methodical. However, there are plenty of incidents where, as a duty officer, my radio would go and they would say, there's a siege, there's a major fire, you need to go there. So there's obviously consequences for them decisions too, but they need to be more rapid, more experienced and less methodical. Because when you're there and you need to decide whether to close a street, whether you need to evacuate properties, whether you need to get the gas turned off, whether you need to get the ambulance service or whichever part of the agency you need, you're having to think on your feet really, really quickly, really quick. So when the life decisions are there, you can have 2 kind of strands to it. But as a senior leader, most of it is kind of the quick fire, high risk missing people, for example. Do I take the decision to go and track their phone, look at their bank accounts to see if they're spending money? All that has to be proportionate. But when there is there can be challenges and consequences behind it. It does make you think more, but also you've got that job to do, So it's just a matter of getting on with it, really. I think to rebuild purpose, you've got to be honest with yourself first to say that you need that to be rebuilt. I'm not going to say everyone needs to get support, but there's been some stats done, and the numbers were the average person sees maybe 2 to 3 traumatic incidents in their lifetime. So the average, member of the public would see 2 to 3 incidents. The average police officer would see 300 to 400 in their career. So sometimes they get compartmentalised about it. Sometimes officers are saying this is just part of the job, and yeah, dealing with trauma is part of the job, but being able to deal with it in the right way, you have to acknowledge it first. And unfortunately, sometimes the police culture doesn't allow it. The bravado, it's just part of the job culture is still too prevalent in the blue light services, unfortunately. And because of that, people are afraid to stand up and ask for help because they don't want to be seen as, in their eyes, as the weak link to the chain. So if the person they're working with isn't seeking help, then it's very unlikely they're going to seek help as well. So we definitely need to change that culture to help that trauma management in the blue light services. Well, one of the themes I get in my talks is I get a lot of approaches afterwards, and sometimes on the day, sometimes afterwards with messages, and they generally follow the theme of "Thank God it's not just me." And even though in reality we all know that people suffer from mental health, when your friend circle or your work circle don't expose their own, you sometimes think it's just you. So I want people to think that they're not alone, that the uniform isn't a barrier, and senior roles and crisis roles aren't barriers to speaking about your mental health. Just because you have authority to make decisions, whether it's in the oil and gas sector, whether it's in the civil service, doesn't matter where it is. Just because you are in a position of authority, it doesn't mean to say you can't suffer with your mental health, and it doesn't mean to say you can't and shouldn't talk to people about it. So my message is really, really clear. I just want people to talk more about mental health. I want organisations to embrace it more, and I want people who are suffering more to reach out. Suicides in police in particular are climbing. They're climbing in the UK. We're getting to the stage that officers are dying by suicide every other month. You know what I mean? And that's just not acceptable. We're putting these young men and women in positions of authority with decision-making powers, arrest powers, but that support isn't really around it. So my talks are really and I say it's not just policing. I just want people to walk away going, do you know what? I can ask for help. There's so many places out there. There's an abundance of excellent organisations, and I just want people to reach out and ask and say how they're feeling so they don't become another statistic.